Well, it was a moment that transfixed America in horror. The moment that passenger jets slammed into New York's Twin Towers, sending thousands to their deaths. The moment that changed a nation for good. But 10 years on, as Americans struggle with two long-running wars and a failing economy, attitudes to 9/11 and the threat of terrorism have shifted. Our Washington correspondent, Matt Frei, has traveled to another Manhattan, this one in Kansas, the very heart of America, to find out how people there now view that fateful day.
Manhattan the way you've probably never seen it before. Manhattan, Kansas, in the very middle of Middle America. Big skies and no shortage of horizon. This is the kind of place where America feels exceptional and limitless.
Uh-oh, they're cracking the whip.
We joined the annual cattle drive across the drought-dried plains of Kansas to celebrate the state's 150th birthday.
Here!
And yes, in case you're wondering, this is a historical reenactment. Reliving the past, or an idealized version of it, is all the rage today. And the uncertain future promises to be no better than the glum present.
Let's hold these here, we'll bring them big steers back up.
It's 1,000 miles from the other Manhattan, but like everyone else, everywhere else, they too were glued to their televisions on that late summer's day 10 years ago.
I think 9/11 played a major impact on our country. It woke our country up, it created a united atmosphere within our country. But I think our country and our government is just it's like a runaway stagecoach. It's out of control. And I said, until the American people step up, stand their ground, and take charge, we're going to have some problems.
What are America's biggest enemies these days?
Ourselves, I think.
Yourselves?
I think.
It's not what you'd expect to hear from a cowboy. Down the road, they see it differently. Fort Riley alone has 18,000 soldiers, 10% of the entire British military. It is Manhattan's biggest employer, a city in its own right. Iraq and Afghanistan have not only kept them busy here, but also given them a cause since the end of the Cold War. On one of the few hills in Kansas, overlooking the base he calls home, we spoke to Sergeant Peter Rosie, a son of Edinburgh, although you wouldn't know it anymore. A Scot now fighting America's wars. On 9/11, he was a paramedic for the fire department in New York. At the age of 45, he decided to re-enlist.
After 9/11, my desire to go back in the military initially was for payback. I was really
Payback for the extremists, for the
angry.
people who did this.
Okay, very angry.
So it started out as revenge, and it ended up being what?
It ended up being wanting to help, you know. I mean, I wasn't fighting to preserve the way things were before 9/11, because if that were the case, then I'd be fighting to preserve a world that produced dictators, tyrants, and these knuckleheads that we're dealing with now, right? The world's got to be better than that, or it's just not worth fighting for.
In the base's own hospital, we came across Major Jennifer Glidewell. For her too, 9/11 was deeply personal. She was working in the Pentagon when the third plane hit, and at this time of year, she has trouble sleeping. How do you think 9/11 changed America?
I think at a core level, for those of us directly involved in 9/11, we all lost a lot of naivete that day. Some of the sights and sounds, you know, nobody should know what those things are. And a lot of our servicemen and women and civilians that support them, you know, have been through that same thing as well. We have a new generation of heroes.
America has spent 10 years, trillions of dollars and thousands of lives trying to change the world. But as the raw pain of 9/11 has become history, the priorities have moved closer to home. When I first came to this country 1 year after 9/11, America was united in its anger and its determination to teach the world a lesson. But 2 bruising wars and 1 long recession later, this once all-bestriding colossus is coming to terms more and more with its own limitations like perhaps never before. And here in Manhattan, Kansas, like in the rest of the country, what's really undermining American self-confidence is not the enemy from outside, but the threat from within, the failing economy. The well-scrubbed streets hide the weak economic pulse here. The state's unemployment is at 9.1%, uncannily similar to the national average, and a number which even the White House now admits will not improve before next year's election.
Let's take a look here. You've got your functional
At the Manhattan
summary.
Workforce Center, Daniel is one of the reluctant regulars, a member of the nouveau poor middle class. Although he's a trained engineer who's even worked on a nuclear sub, he's been out of work for almost a year. How tough is it finding a job at the moment?
Well, I've been out of work now for 11 months, and have in that time only had one interview.
One interview?
One interview.
In 11 months?
In 11 months. Sometimes it's hard, you know, just to go ahead and put in more applications and so on, you know, just because a lot of times I don't even hear back.
Back on the cattle trail, they're getting ready for an early dinner. What they hope to reenact, and what America is desperate to rekindle, is that pioneer spirit. 9/11 triggered a decade in which America tried nation-building overseas. The next decade will be all about nation-building at home. Matt Frei, Channel 4 News, Manhattan,